Our next guest on the Sports Hour show is the Sports and Recreation Coordinator at the Brimbank City Council. You're listening to Brimbank Live on Live FM. Welcome to the Sports Hour show. Paul Battaglia. How you going, Paul?
Very well, Max. How you going?
Good, thank you. It's great to have you on. Now, just wanted to start and see how the council, has it been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic much over this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone is sort of, struggling with it. It's just, I think it's the consistency in terms of the change and not knowing what's next. And I think when you say struggling, we're probably not going to know the full, impact until we're sort of through it with a lot of the clubs. I think a lot of clubs are working, extremely well to deal with the changes and being very flexible, as is council, and the state sporting bodies are doing a fantastic job to manage it as well, because day to day, there's things are changing. The club volunteers and things, I think, are probably the ones that are impacted the most. They are volunteers, but there's been so much more demand on them to do additional things at the club, separate to the day-to-day things they would normally do. And as we know, volunteers are hard to come by. To have them doing additional work to try and get sport back, they've done a brilliant job and then continue to do so. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is just the additional requirements that COVID has brought right now. But then I think the broader issue is probably after the season, financially, what that means for some clubs and whether they'll survive. And we really won't know that until we probably come out of the back end of it. So, yeah, it's yet to be seen. But, yeah, absolutely. It's just the changing environment, like on a day-to-day basis when an announcement's made. Just when you think you get over the last hurdle and you think you're going in the right direction, then as you can see, things can change very quickly.
Yes, and have clubs asked for support for specific things? I know financially some clubs might be struggling. Has that been one thing, and is there anything else that they've asked for during this time?
Yeah, I think it's probably more from a financial perspective. Council made a decision to for winter clubs specifically to waive their fees, 100% of fees for winter clubs. But not only that, we've got our lease and licence clubs like Keilor Basketball Association, who are based at the basketball stadium. We've waived their fees during the closure, and we'll continue to work with those groups because we know financially is it a big problem. But I guess the other thing from a club perspective is some of the restrictions, and, the facilities are set up and historically they've used them in a certain way. They have to use them very differently now, and not being able to, train with the same numbers of kids and things like that. So we have been in a position where we haven't been able to give, access to facilities at a point in time because of the outbreak, which just makes it very difficult to manage by the clubs. But in terms of other support, we're generally looking at, funding opportunities, getting in touch with them. There's, the state government just put out a funding opportunity for clubs to get, $1,000. But there's other ways and means that, council are supporting by doing the first clean to their pavilion, so the clubs didn't have to do that. We're looking at sort of some hand sanitisers that we're providing for clubs, just to get them going. All those small costs, they all add up for clubs. So there's a range of different things that council is doing to support. But mainly the main support we're providing is probably trying to help them work through some return to play plans and trying to understand the guidelines. There's so many things out there. So our job is really to probably understand what they are, how they work, and then communicate that to clubs to give them a level of comfort. But the state sporting bodies, ourselves, Sport and Recreation Victoria, have worked really well, and closely together to try and help clubs and support clubs as much as we can.
Yes, and can you tell us a bit about your role at the council and what you do there?
Yep, absolutely. I'm the Sport and Rec Coordinator. So, yeah, we look after everything sport, but not just structured sport. We look after a lot more. So my portfolio, I actually look after the Keilor Basketball Stadium. So, obviously, a large amount of users in the Keilor Basketball Association based there, plus schools. Also manage the contract of the Keilor Golf Course. And my team specifically, I've got 2 Sport and Rec officers, an active communities development officer and a sports programs and booking officer as well. So pretty much what we look after is everything to do with clubs and their facilities, ground allocations, and also, the development and planning around, updating and improving facilities. But the other arm we do have, which is really important, is the informal side of sport. So our active community development officer does a lot of, programming and informal sport. But yeah, through our physical activity strategy, trying to get those people who may not want to play structured sport or don't have the ability to play structured sport because of time or financial impacts. So we try low cost activities to try and get other people fit and active in the community as well.
Yes, and one of those programs you guys have is the Intersport Brimbank Council initiative. Is that that's one thing that helps get people out on the park? Is that one of the biggest things? And can you tell us a bit more about that program?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been around for a while, and I think Brimbank was one of the first councils to promote it. So it's a membership subsidy program, and it's really important. And in terms of saying supporting clubs, this is something we've been supporting clubs for, I think now about 6 or 7 years, this program's been in place. So what it is, it's a program where for, I guess, kids aged from 6 to 18 can apply through their sporting club. And it's a $200 up to $200 membership subsidy that they can get off their membership. So basically they apply to council if you're in that category where you need a healthcare card. So for people with low socioeconomic backgrounds. So they need to be basically 6 to 18 and have a concession card and then they're eligible. But what we also do have to try and provide a priority for some of those people who may not get access to sport. We've got a priority period for girls, also people with disability, that if they, and first-time people that are playing the sport. So just to give them that opportunity. So, yeah, $200 off their membership. So they apply to council. We send a letter to their clubs. The clubs, basically identify that particular person is playing for the club, and then the club invoices council for if it's 10 members or whatever it might be, and we pay the club that money, and that comes off the the participants' membership, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. I know from playing at my local clubs that a lot of kids have benefited from that and been able to get involved at the club. We see facilities continue to grow and get better and better in Brimbank. Has this been a real focus over the last 5-10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Brimbank's one of the leading councils in terms of investment in sports facilities, and that's through what we call our sports facility development plan, and that's first come into play in 2012. And a lot of councils do have this plan, but what this is a 10-year capital plan for sports facilities and investment in sport. And it can range from anything from, upgrade to, the bigger projects, sports pavilions, floodlighting, female-friendly upgrades as well, so specific to change rooms to make them female-friendly. But a lot of other rolling programs like, kitchen upgrades, irrigation upgrades, coaches' boxes, goalposts. There's probably about 20 sort of different rolling programs in that. And yes, it has been a huge focus for council because a lot of the facilities are poor, and that obviously does impact on clubs being able to attract members to their facilities. But over the last probably since it's been in play, which is 2012, we've updated it 3 times, and that's about some of the trends that might have changed, especially female sports. So we've changed a lot of our programs in relation to that. But there's been a huge investment for council, and I think the last year we council invested an extra $10 million into that program to bring some of those projects forward, which is, I think we did something like 7 floodlighting upgrades. We're doing now 3 pavilion upgrades when we normally do 1. So we've really pushed that through, and our council and our executive management team have done a fantastic job in supporting sport. And that's been fantastic for the community and our clubs because they're the ones that benefit out of those upgrades.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see it visually when you drive across Brimbank, the changes. Women's sport, it's growing, and the recent announcement of the Women's World Cup to be hosted by Australia and New Zealand will give it a real big boost.
Yep.
Have the council made any changes to cater for this and even in general, what are some of the changes that you guys have made?
Yeah, it's been a huge focus, and it is council's focus, and that's what we talk about, some of the trends in terms of our facilities. So 2 years ago, we updated our sports facility development plan because we saw state government were changing that. The Office of Women in Sport was developed by state government. A lot more funding was put towards that. So that's why we have a female-friendly program in the sports facility development plan. And what that is upgrading the facilities to make sure they are benefiting the females and having the capacity to support the sport. But there's a range of other things we're doing informally as well through Be Active. We're running a lot of programs, but something that council's just part of now was it was a women's participation in sport in Melbourne's West Action Plan for Change, it's called, which was 5 other metro councils, and that's about a bit of work that's done about what can we do to further support women and get women involved in sport. And it's not just about facilities; it's more than that. It's about changing culture of clubs. It's about working with committees to get that equality on boards where it's not male dominated, getting 50-50. So there's a range of things that's come out of that particular document, which will be adopted by council in August actually, and that's something that the Western Region Councils are going to work on together. So that's a huge element of that as well. But not only that, we have discounts in our fees and charges policies that if you have female teams or if you have a number of committee members in terms of, 50% of your committee, that we give you discounts. So there's quite a few things that we've done to implement and support female sport and actively encourage that. But probably the other one, which we well know, that a lot of females can't, necessarily play competitive sports. Training 2 days a week and then playing on weekends is not ideal. So the physical activity strategy and Be Active was a key part of that, the informal sport. So Pilates in park, yoga and doing a lot of that sort of informal activity to provide flexibility of timing as well. So it might be during the day or, first thing in the morning on the weekends or at night, so that to provide that flexibility for women to participate when they can rather than being a Saturday afternoon. And as we know with sport, unfortunately, there's a lot of history there with, being male dominated at set times that they play, whereas females sort of just get put on a Sunday. And if they can't play on that Sunday, then they miss that opportunity. So it's about providing that flexibility, which council has done and will continue to do.
We're talking to Paul Battaglia, the Sports and Recreation Coordinator at the Brimbank City Council. What's some of the real focuses that you guys are putting on for sports in the future of Brimbank?
Yeah, like I mentioned, it's probably the informal side. The structured side's great, but probably trying to look at some of the physical activity, side about getting people. So informal sports and, whether it's, touch rugby or AFL 9s or summer 7s with soccer, but looking at a range of different sort of social activities to get people involved that just want to turn up and play. We've got such a multicultural community that they just want to turn up and play. And a lot of our parks and gardens we've actually opened up. And we've built multi-purpose courts that are free for the community. So, for example, at Errington Reserve, we got funding through the state government through Sport and Recreation in Victoria. We built this multi-purpose court at Errington Reserve, which has got volleyball, soccer, basketball, and we've got lights on it as well. That's purely a free access to the community to use that. And it's about that informal side, just to be actively encouraging people to come and play. So we're looking at more informal ways of getting people involved. And that includes, like I said, yoga in the park, Pilates in the park, that sort of thing as well.
Yes, and living in Brimbank, I can see those little outdoor gyms being built all around
Absolutely.
town.
Yeah.
It's really brilliant. And once COVID's done, I can't wait to go and use them. And I'm sure after you've told us here, all the listeners can get excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you tell us some of the challenges you guys might face as a council and some of the things that sporting clubs demand? What might be how you guys deal with them as a whole and what might be a few of the challenges there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think clubs' facilities is always the big thing. And I think the sports facility development plan, like I mentioned, is fantastic because the clubs can see where they are. There's a priority list and what's next on the list. But I think the big challenge, for a lot of clubs is the growth of sport and, the facilities in terms of lack of facilities. We'd love to have open space, that we could, go and use tomorrow. And when a club grows, that we can just find them somewhere else. So the challenge is, a lot of clubs are growing and that's brilliant, but that brings its challenges in terms of space. So that's probably the key one where we have a lot of clubs, sharing facilities now and having to be more flexible with multi-purpose use of facilities, and council's building a lot of those as part of, what we are doing so it's not a soccer specific, a reserve. It might be an oval that can cater for soccer, can cater for rugby, can cater for whatever it may be. And that's what we are doing. And we're building additional facilities to support that. So you might have three sports grounds at one reserve, but if you only got 2 change rooms, it really limits capacity. So supporting the infrastructure for some of that as well. But we are looking at, other ways and means to support clubs with their growth. And that's around, trying to get multi-purpose use of facilities, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Paul, for coming on today and coming on the Sports Hour show to speak to us. And a special thank you must go out to the Brimbank as well for supporting the Brimbank live show and Ralph Barber's live FM radio station. So, yeah, pass on those thank yous to your members at work. And, really appreciate you coming on today, Paul.
No, appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm glad I could be of some assistance. And, let's hope, what's happening, moves pretty quickly and people can get back to playing sport, which is what we want as well.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Paul.
All right, good on you.
And that was Paul Battaglia from the Brimbank City Council, the Sports and Recreation Coordinator. And we thank him for coming on the Sports Hour show on Brimbank Live on Live FM.